LambdaLoopers is an IT consulting software development agency, which specializes in solving complex business problems and technological challenges using the minimum amount of software. Well, I would not say minimum amount of software. That's not fair. But we try not to reinvent the wheel. If we can avoid developing, typing some code, it's better. So in our 7 years of experience, we have been working with lots of different processes of to digitalize several business operations. We have been doing more than 50 internal tools, back office for several companies. And I want to present a very opinionated stack to provide a fast solution for these kind of problems. So if we want to provide, to build a product, avoiding all this boring stuff, we have to find some way of providing a solid solution for authentication, navigation, authorization, permissions, roles, all the CRUD operations, all the CRUD views, lists, all these export-import actions that usually take place in back-office tools. Okay, so where do we use PHP? Well, it's not only those are not the only cases where we use PHP, but it's some of the problems where PHP ecosystem shines. When we want to build a back office for existing product, a SaaS B2B platform, a management or internal tool. For some examples that we built with this stack are CMS for an app of flexible retribution for employees, or a SaaS for medical centers to optimize the usage of beds and the diagnosis tools to increment the amount of patients that those hospitals can handle. In fact, in this kind of problem, we used these tools to avoid all the CRUD stuff and focusing on algorithms, on optimization tools, which is the really interesting part. I mean, nobody wants to do 10 pages of create, edit, and list something. Okay, so, okay, which advantages we found in PHP ecosystem? It's a large development community. We are a consultancy company, so we need to hire all the time. And having lots of developers, it's always an advantage. There are several powerful frameworks, Laravel, Symfony, and there are more frameworks, but those two are the more powerful ones. Well, someone here says that no? Well, only two, yeah. It has a large open source community, lots of open source libraries. One example, right now we are working in a huge problem, a huge product with .NET stack. And while we are migrating a huge ERP, and we found that something that if we were, that in PHP would have been really easy, like integrating a file management system inside the product, not using a SharePoint. It's really easy in PHP. There are lots of open source libraries that you can extend that are really tested, but in .NET community, it's quite difficult to find that much content, that much stuff that you can reuse. And finally, PHP frameworks have some of the most reliable ORMs. So how this compared to other ecosystems. I put this here 3 examples. There are dozens of them, but some ecosystems that we already used in similar projects and what we have found. So Java has a large community. Spring Boot are great frameworks. Strong ORM like Hibernate, GPA. But Spring ecosystem, I found that requires lots of boilerplate, lots of repetitive tasks, doesn't offer that much tools on avoiding certain boring tasks. Python, good ecosystem for data, ML, AI, statistics. Django is a quite mature framework. I don't like very much the other ones, but maybe I don't know enough of Python. But I find that, well, unless we found that lacks a rich ecosystem on content management, doing CRUD operations, doing actions, and jobs is something that is not that mature as in PHP. One moment. With Node has the largest community of developers right now. Has some advantages, like it's language for all, like in the Lord of the Rings. You can domain everything just with one language. And in fact, this one is, for me, the best competitor right now, because it has some cool tools like Strapi. But I still found that our ORMs and database management in Node.js communities is still a bit unstable. I think that is because they are more used to use non-relational databases, doesn't have that much develop this kind of tools. If you don't agree, you can interrupt me and say, that's bullshit. Okay, yeah?
Not from bullshit, but for example, just explaining pros and cons of the languages, but what are the cons in PHP?
The cons in PHP?
Because PHP
No. I think it's a no. I think that PHP is a really good stack for this kind of back office internal tool solutions. But for example, if you have to do really intensive data processing, it's not that fast. It's not that reliable. Doesn't have that many libraries like Python. I think that it's more difficult to find lots of developers, not like in Node. Doesn't stand that strongly with single-page applications, with server-side rendering and all this stuff. When you have to do lots of things with WebSockets, Node has a lot of advantages. All ends up with which kind of project are you building. And right now I'm focusing on internal tools, management tools. In this kind of problems, I think that PHP is really strong and can stand against any other ecosystem, but not for all products. I mean, if you have to do a native application, PHP is not the solution. Maybe for the API, but not. Well, I don't know. Well,
I hate that because I did it. I moved to Node, Lambda, because it was faster.
yeah, it's fast. It's faster. If you, but sometimes you don't care that much about being fast. You.
But this is about get data from a database, process that data from database, and deliver it to the output. PHP is the best method.
Well, that's what I'm defending here. But thanks. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, which kind? How is the stack we usually use to do these back office topologies? We tend to use Laravel with Filament, which is content management framework system. Some libraries that almost all the time we are using is Laravel permissions, tenancy for Laravel, PHP unit, and feature it to manage feature flags. So, yeah. Depending on the project, we may use other libraries like libraries for file management, to integrate social login, to integrate payment interactions. That depends on the programs, on the project specifically, internationalization. But this is something that almost all the projects will need. Tenancy, multi-tenancy, only if we are developing SaaS solutions, but that's almost all the time. So, one question, do we need an SPA, a single page application? A single page application is an application where the website is dynamically loaded by the browser. So compared with classic server-side rendering pages where you want to load a page, server returns all the HTML, single page applications loads all the front-end content a single time, or almost, and then just asks for some data to the back office, to the backend. So there are some pros on single page application: reduce server load, lower time loads on successive requests, and lower traffic overall. But there are lots of cons also, like increased initial loading time. SEO, it's really quite difficult with single page applications, not impossible, but it's a pain in the ass. And development becomes more complex. Usually, you will need another language, like JavaScript, if you are not using JavaScript in the backend, another framework to manage all the front-end, requires to develop a full API, requires to manage in a more complex way permissions, feature flags. For example, segmentation in front-end, it's quite difficult if you have a single page application, because if you expose segmentation in feature flags in the front-end, then competence can scrap it and know how is your market segmentation. That we can talk about that later, but yeah. Yeah, because usually when you have a single page application with an API, responsibility is not that clear sometimes. With basic CRUD actions, yeah, it's clear, but then you have other solutions to do that. But it requires more thinking on the architecture of the project. So, one alternative in PHP to get somehow the best of both worlds, Livewire. Livewire is a library of Laravel that allows you to have somehow some of the best things of the both situations of between a single page application, a server-side render. The initial render is done uniquely by the server, but once it has loaded the first page, any interaction makes an AJAX request to the server, and the server only recalculates the changes required to reload that component. So it returns a the differences between the original DOM and the new one, and then a script in the front end mutates DOM to manage these changes. So you get much faster initial loading times because you don't have to download all the front end, a more SEO-friendly page because you can manage SEO in the classical way, less server load than in a server-side rendered website because you don't, in each change of page or when you load a model or you reorder a list, only has to respond to these changes. It's a bit higher than in single page applications because you are not only returning the new data but also the HTML structure, but still it's much better than reloading all the page. And less traffic. So Filament, as I said, is a content management framework that works on top of Livewire, Laravel, Alpine, and Tailwind. Tailwind for the styles, Alpine for as a micro framework for the front end, Laravel as a we have been using Nova for a long time. It has some. Nova is like the official package support by Orwell, the creator of Laravel. But first of all, it's not open source. It has a license, so community cannot contribute to make it better. Filament, it's much more modular. It's much more. You can extend Filament and say, "Oh, I improved this." They will accept. Well, if you can contribute to improve the project. Lots of members of the community are implied on improving this library. It's open source, so you can change anything on the code. You can publish any of the providers of Filament and modify it. You cannot do that in Nova. And Nova, since version 4, for example, they changed everything to Vue. All you did before, all the script, all the plugins and libraries that did before are no longer working. The new ones are not working in the old ones. And Filament let you automatize as much or even more work than in Nova, but doesn't impose you how you have to work. And it's not a closed system. It's open to extension. So I find it much more pleasant to work and even faster. That's okay. Well, I mean, I import the libraries that I need in Filament. But the thing is that in most of the projects, some pages are, we make some of the pages, some of the processes with Filament, and some other in just plain Blade, or in Vue components, or with Alpine. The thing is that it's not something that forbids you to use the regular flow of Laravel. It's just something that you can use as an alternative. And we find that for configuration pages, for all the internal stuff for our products, it's much faster to develop it with Filament. You don't care if this button is, well, you can configure a lot of things in Filament, but you want something that provides a solution fast and reliable. And most of the time, all the developers that contribute to Filament in their Zoom will be better than you alone. So it's difficult to. Sometimes no, maybe they are genius, but usually it's something that adds value to the stack. When you want to do a very specific page, you can go for any other framework. Okay, so queuing corners with Artisan command line. For those of you that have worked with Laravel, I'm sure that you use Artisan command line all the time. Like PHP Artisan make model. Usually, if you want to do a back office page, but then you will use it in an API for a front-end application, for an app, a mobile app, anything like that, you can use the flag with all, and this will create the migrations, the seeder, the factory, the resources for creating and for editing, the controller, the requests, and the update models. So it creates for you all the boilerplate. And Filament has something similar. Well, make Filament resource, which creates automatically all the CRUD pages and all the CRUD actions. And if you add the generate flag, this is one of the few advantages I think that has active record ORM of Laravel. You don't like it, but it's one advantage in this case, which is that Eloquent, as an active record ORM, is able to extract the fields from the database without having to declare them explicitly. So when you do this, you run this command with a generate, if there is a previous existing database, it will already generate all the tables, all the lists, all the edit pages, all the create pages with all the fields of the database automatically. You will not have to declare, here goes a text with the name, here goes a text with the surname. No, everything is included. So this was especially useful, well, has been especially useful in several projects. Specifically, I remember one project with an hospital where they have a huge SQL Server database with 5,000 tables, all denormalized. We have to create a new tool to manage samples for labs and how they they freeze the samples to store it, to store them. And in few minutes, we were able to have a CRUD of hundreds of tables just with a single command or a few commands. I will lie to you if I say that I try it. Some of the developers on LambdaLoopers have worked with Symfony. We have used it in some projects, but we found that Laravel is more agile to start.
Laravel is more flexible because the ORM that Laravel has is more lazy with a lot of things. It's more lazy about the relations of the database, point keys, etc. And Doctrine, that is the URM official for Symfony, is more.
It's not. Symfony is no unique.
Yo quiero que se peleen. Fight, fight.
For me, it's better in that case because it obliges to you that your database is very good format or well formatted. So this is more flexible. Yes. That permits to you do worse things.
Yeah.
That is the topic is like active record is an anti-pattern. Yeah, it's for many people it's in a language it's an anti-pattern because all you because active record know everything about infrastructure and about everything about yourself, and it's impossible to abstract from there. Try to remove Eloquent from Laravel is impossible.
This is the point. Actually, out of Eloquent or out of the model of Laravel, sometimes
But I will give something good to Laravel. Give something good to Laravel. It's fast to develop. It's good for doing MVPs.
I think that this is an open discussion for centuries between. Uy, 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 uy. Bueno, no pasa nada. It's an open discussion between Symfony and Laravel fans. I'm not actually fan. Hey, it's nice. I mean,
How do you handle the situation when you were able to store creating CRUD, but the customer comes with a lot of business rules and you have to place somewhere?
Okay. Ask me about the specific example, because it depends on the rule.
Yeah, suppose that the example that you give us, like the hospital or the clinic, you are able to store the information and different things, but that part is the first part. After that, the customer starts with a lot of business rules, this kind of thing that is not
Okay. I will go to the secret section of Filament action example. Okay, here we are setting up a specific action on filament. Imagine you want to modify how the store action or the save action or the any process you want to customize it. You can redeclare or extend the previous existing one. In this case, we created a new kind of action. There is a model called sample, which is a sample, blood sample, a tissue sample, and we want to be able to not just create them, edit them, delete, list. We also want to do some specific action, which is transfer them to another location. Well, just declare a filament action, which will be part of the layout automatically, and we don't add the domain logic in a filament model. We just declare the filament model, and then you can see here. Let me test this. Here, action function sample transfer service transfer. This is a domain logic service that handles all this complexity. So you can move to the domain any complex process that you have to do and say, okay, filament, don't work here, I will handle the situation. That solves your question? Okay, let's continue with permissions. Most of the times, almost all the applications, what they need is airbag permissions, which is role-based access control. Maybe they need more than that, but at least this, which is when you need to define access to certain process, to certain endpoints, pages, actions, to restrain this ability to perform these actions to certain users based on the role they have. You can define roles, attach permissions to these roles, and attach these roles to specific users. So Laravel permissions abstracts all this complexity. You just have to add hash permissions to the user model and do a simple command, and it will add a policy file with the policies managed via database to all the models in the project. So, and then you can modify them and do whatever you want. And Filament Shield is one of the libraries that we have used to be able to show these roles, these permissions, and modify them from this back office solution. There's not much more to say. Okay, and finally, feature flags. Okay, feature flag. From the other presentation, I think that everybody knows what is a feature flag. Anyway, a feature flag is a tool that allows you to activate or deactivate a feature without modifying the code. It's like an if that calls another service. Why is use that? There are several uses. We use feature flags as a kill switch. Imagine you have a production product that has several features, and you detect that one feature makes the product unstable. It's better to degrade functionality, to deactivate this feature, but maintain all the rest of the product stable, or it has some bug, or something like that. It can be used to decide when you want to deploy or to activate this feature. We use extreme programming in LambdaLoopers. We don't do releases. Every time anyone does a feature or a task, goes directly to production. Everything is encapsulated with feature flags, and as by default is deactivated. Then we do a progressive rollout segmented by certain users, so only those users can test this feature. And what else can be done with feature flags? We can do A/B testing. Say, okay, Now, for these users, use version B. For these users, use version A of the feature. Let's see how they behave. Which one is better? Which one increases more of revenue and make us rich, which is something that is nice. Okay? I know we test it. We add integration tests, unit tests, especially on domain classes and domain services. But yeah, it goes directly to production. Not all the products we have. It depends on the client. There are some clients that are more coward, but generally, yeah, we try to enforce that everything goes to production. We try to develop properly. Eh? Yeah, the only thing that matters is production. Staging, yeah, it's nice, but no user will pay $1 for staging. So, yeah, question. If there is a feature, if there are two versions of an API endpoint that those two versions use different tables or databases, and you are keeping I'm putting an example. I mean, when Facebook publishes a new version of their public API, they don't deprecate immediately the previous version. If they have to do changes in the database structure and the model structure, they have to maintain both models and see how they can live together for some time while the old version is still available. So this has to be done with a proper architecture, designing well the products, understanding that you have to allow to live some versions of your product more than what you would like as a software engineer. So you have to maybe replicate both models at the same time for both versions of the API. That depends on the problem. There's no easy solution. It sometimes makes it more difficult to develop, but also forces you to design better the domain layer, the infrastructure layer, and have a strong architecture. So, and we are not scared about these problems. That solves the questions. I mean, okay, thanks. So, why we use Feature It for these Laravel solutions? One good reason is that Feature It has an SDK, a package to SDK to specifically design it for Laravel. So you can use it as you can see here, here, as a facade, which is quite common in Laravel to call singleton services. You can, for example, here use it also in Laravel code in PHP to choose which version you should show. But there is also a way painlessly to use feature flags with Feature It. In blades without having to paste it, to declare it in the controller and paste it to the blade. You can just use it as a blade directive. So it makes it very comfortable to use feature flags in Laravel projects.